and welcome. You're listening to the Just Love Them podcast. I'm your host, Shiree Best. Join me on a journey to build understanding, learn how to heal, and find peace with the people we care about who have stepped away from the faith we once shared together. Today, I have a very special guest, Emily Cheney. Emily is a certified life coach and host of Becoming a Relentless Woman, a podcast for women who are ready to stop holding themselves back and go after their dream life. She was certified at the Life Coach School. She helps women build unreasonable confidence in themselves from the inside out so they can live with intention, show up authentically, and create the impact they're meant for in their personal lives and in the world. I'm so excited to have you here today, Emily.
I'm really happy to be here too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I feel like I want to say a little bit about how we met. So I went to I guess it was a business alliance meeting, and there was some networking going on, and we happened to sit at the same table for lunch. And I was so excited when Emily sat down, and then I found out that she was a life coach too, because it's always fun to connect life coaches with each other. We all do something a little bit different. And as we got talking, I was just so impressed with you, Emily. And so I got on and listened to your podcast, some episodes from your podcast. And the one that I really, really thought would be so beautiful for you to share with my listeners today was the one that I asked you to talk about. I'm so excited for Emily to share with you what I heard her share on her own podcast.
Awesome. When you go to networking events, I feel like you just meet the right people. It's funny, you just sit at the same table and it's like, oh, we have something that we can share with each other. So,
Yeah, it worked out so well. I would love for you to just jump right in. I learned a lot just by listening to you.
so Shiree asked me to tell you all about this concept called fact versus story. I think it's going to be super applicable and useful for honestly anything in your life, but especially in this context of this podcast. Learning to have stronger relationships and mend relationships if they've been hurt in the past due to like maybe differences in faith or whatever. So let me just break this down for you. The difference between fact and a story. I guess first, the reason why we want to know the difference between these two things and why it matters here is because it helps us understand where we have control and where we don't have control in a situation. So it can bring us a lot more peace. It can help us understand. I think it just makes every problem easier when we can understand the difference between fact and a story. We'll start with facts. So facts, they're the facts of the world. They're things that everyone has to agree on. So some simple examples of a fact might be the weather outside. Not that it's hot or cold, but the temperature. We're talking numbers. A fact might be the amount of money in your bank account, not whether it's a lot or a little, but the number. A fact is also anything outside of your control, so including what people say or do. Fact might be the words somebody said, not whether this person was rude or kind, but just the words that they said. The important thing to know about facts is that they're neutral. What that means is that facts, these things in the world outside of our control that everyone has to agree on, they don't inherently make us feel good or bad. They're not inherently positive or negative. They just are. And the reason that is because we all have different opinions, different stories about the fact. For example, let's start with money. So let's say that your bank account has $1,000 in it. Your thought is that's not enough, and you feel like sad about it. But maybe there's someone else in the world who also has $1,000 in their bank account. But they are so excited and they're so happy that they have $1,000 in their bank account because maybe they were in debt or maybe they just got out of college and they're so happy that they actually have savings. You know what I mean? The number itself, the number of 1,000 is not inherently good or bad. It just is a number. And it's our story about it, it's our thoughts about it that make it either positive or negative. That's what the facts are. And then I kind of already explained a little bit, but the story, it's the thoughts or opinions or perspective that we have on the facts. I'll give you another example, a simple one. Let's say weight. Let's say someone weighs 150 pounds and they feel really good about that. That's like their ideal weight. They're feeling really healthy and good. But maybe there's someone else who also weighs 150 pounds, but maybe that's too much for them. Maybe they wish they weighed less. The number itself, the number on the scale, 150 pounds, is neutral. It's a fact. It's literally just a number. It can't make you feel something until you have a story about it, until we have thoughts about it. And the important thing here to know is while facts, we can't change them, they just exist, they just are, our stories are optional. We can always change the way we think about something, and we can choose stories that are either more empowering or are disempowering.
As you were talking about this, the hot and cold, I immediately thought of a story about that. I just went on a trip with my sisters. One of my sisters, she is always hot. She has always got a fan going. She's always got like one of those neck fans on. She sleeps with the window open even in the winter. And I'm the exact opposite. I'm always cold. I'm piling on the blankets. I've always got slippers on. I'm always cold. So we go on this trip together, and she and I know we cannot sleep in the same bedroom because the number, the temperature that it is in the room, that number that's on the thermostat, it's neutral, like what you said. But she's going to interpret that number as she's hot, and I'm going to interpret that number as I'm cold. Just such a good example to think about the neutral part, what's the fact, and the story part, how are we interpreting it? When you mentioned words, we do the same thing with words. We totally put stories and perspective and interpretation on words in assuming that people mean what we think it means when it might not be that at all. And I think that's a huge problem with miscommunication.
For sure, which is I think a big deal when it comes to our relationships and getting coming to understand people
Yeah,
even better. If you want, I'll break this down even a little bit more
I'd love
in a
it.
way to help you understand this even more deeply. Because right now I've explained it very simply. It might feel a little superficial, like, well, duh, we all have different opinions, but it's actually quite interesting. So if I break this down even more, a fact is kind of like what I see. So let's say I go out into my yard and I see a tree. We can't deny that. The tree is there. You know what I mean? We all have to
Mhm.
agree that it exists. What's super interesting about this is like when I see the tree, no, it's not like my opinion of it or what I think about it is just it just exists. What actually happens is I see the tree and I take it in. It's that image or that information is processed in my brain through my belief systems and through my perspective and opinions. So
Mhm.
I'm not just seeing the tree as it is. We see the world through our beliefs or through the stories we have about how the world should be or how the world shouldn't be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is why, I mean, this is kind of a funny story, but this is why two people can see the same thing and one person can love it and someone can be totally underwhelmed by it or like not even care. It's not because the thing in itself is either beautiful or amazing or not or whatever. It's literally because the way we take in information, it's filtered through the stories that we have about the world, the stories we have about people and how they should be or how they shouldn't be, or how our life should go or how our life shouldn't go. That's literally how we take in the information in the world, which is super interesting. I think if we apply this more to relationship and to people in our lives, people do things always, right? They make their own choices and they're always going to be their own people. And like adults just get to be adults. But then we take in their actions or their behaviors. To us, often we just think they're being mean, or we think they're being ill informed, or maybe we think they're being really nice. We have our opinions about the person, but it's not because the person in itself is inherently good or bad or doing good things or not or whatever. It's literally just the way we're taking in the information based on our perception of reality, based on our opinions and beliefs, based on, I mean, maybe our faith, maybe based on how we grew up, maybe based on just our opinions of how we think people should be or how the world should be. When we really break this down, to me, it's a little mind boggling because we realize the way we see the world is not just the way that it is. The way we see the world is literally based on the stories we have in our mind.
Mhm.
And that's based on our past, of course, right? But and things like that. The world, it's and people and things, it's not just what it is. I mean, there's facts, but we get to choose our opinions on it based on how we are, the stories we choose to tell ourselves about the world. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. In fact,
Yeah.
I remembered something that seminary teacher did with us years and years and years ago when I was young. He gave three different groups a word, and it had a letter missing. So there was R, and then like a line for the missing letter, and then PE. So R space PE. Then we each read a story that went with that. And one, because of the story, we thought the word was ripe. And another group, they read the story and they thought the word was rope. And then another group read their story because they're all different stories. They thought the word was rape. We had all these different stories, but because of what we were reading, we all thought that it was a different word. That popped into my brain because I think we do the same thing. Our past, our history is like that story that we read in that scenario. Our past determines what we think in the present. Just like I thought the word was ripe from reading a story about fruit. And the other group thought the word was rope by reading a story about climbing. And the other group thought the word was rape based on a girl who's walking through the dark. Our past brings forward what we think the person is saying or what interprets what they're doing. So we interpret the world through our own lens, and everybody does it a little differently.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's just good to know. We all have a different lens at which we're looking through the world. And so we can't really compare and say one is better than another because it's too complicated. But also that said, we get to choose the lens, which I think is just so empowering. And there's always going to be things that our brain is just doing on default because it's just what we've always done, or if it's just how we've always thought or something, like our brain's going to default do that. But that doesn't mean it always has to be that way. We do really get to choose. Kind of a funny example here. Have you ever been having like a bad day and you're walking around and you're like, ugh, and it's cold and it's ugly and I hate everything outside. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, or you just don't even like notice anything around you.
Of course.
You're just
everybody's had that.
like everything just feels like gloomy. But have you ever, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but maybe someone said something really nice to you. Or maybe you saw something that reminded you that God is watching out for you. You're like a little miracle or a little blessing, tender mercy or whatever. And then suddenly it's like everything flips. And everything feels brighter and everything feels a little more beautiful. And you start to notice the birds or whatever around you. The world didn't change. Literally nothing changed. The only thing that changed was the lens you were looking through. It was the stories you were telling yourself in your mind, the sentences running through your mind, the thoughts in your head. That's what changed. And that's what made the world look brighter.
So let's bring this into relationships. How does knowing this help in relationships?
The truth is, other people are facts. What I mean by that is they are their choices, their whatever they do or don't do, it's technically neutral. Technically, it's neutral. And maybe based on our morals or whatever, or our faith, maybe we have opinions on that. But technically speaking, what other people do or say is neutral. And this is just really good to know because this is not how we usually act or think about people. If someone we love makes a choice that we don't agree with, it's very easy to believe that they are wrong. We have all these thoughts, we have all these stories that they're wrong, that they're not doing life right, that they've made bad choices. We have thoughts and stories that their life is going to fall apart, that maybe we didn't do enough for them, maybe we weren't there enough for them, whatever it is. We have like all these heavy, heavy stories about someone's life that when in reality, we don't really know. There could potentially be some truth to those stories. I'm not saying those stories are all not true. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the point is just because someone makes a decision that's different from what you would have done or a choice that you don't agree with, we get to choose the story we're going to tell about that. We get to choose what we're going to make that mean. I have people in my life who have made all sorts of choices. I think we all do. This is not unique to anyone. This is what life is. We're all human beings, all on our own journeys, and we're all making different choices at different times because of a million different reasons. When people do things that I maybe don't understand, or I can't understand why they would have made that choice, I just like to slow things down and remind myself I don't want to impose my own opinions and stories on this too much because I really don't understand. When I look at someone's like choices as a neutral thing, it just, for me, it takes the weight off and I have a lot less judgment towards the person. And I realize I don't really understand why they would do that. And they probably don't understand why I'm doing what I would do. And that's okay. We're all just human beings. I think that's how this applies to our relationships is I think we need to be really careful and really wise about the choices or behaviors that people engage in. We need to be very careful about what we make it mean because we really don't know. And I find a lot of these stories that we tell about people aren't useful. Yeah. They tend to be full of a lot of shame, maybe towards us for not doing enough or not being there. They might be full of a lot of fear for the person, a lot of doubt, a lot of worry, which gets us nowhere. These stories that we tell about people, If they're not serving us, if they're not serving us in the relationship, why are we thinking them? Why are we telling ourselves these stories? Because the truth is they're just not necessarily true. Even if we do see someone make a choice and we do see their life go in a direction that's maybe painful for us to watch, and that's no fun and there's space for that emotion, we don't have to tell ourselves this story that we should have done something differently in the past for them. We don't need to tell ourselves this story that they're destined to have a horrible life and everything's going to fall apart. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not useful,
Yeah.
but it's
And
optional. Even if it feels true, it's optional. And so we get to choose, we have the option to choose to look at the person with more love and compassion and just more like neutrality and realize we don't understand. But we get to decide to think whatever we want about it. And there's a lot more useful options out there.
I agree. Often when we decide what we're going to make something mean, which I love that term because it makes it very clear that we're making a judgment. I think when you fall into judgment, we make negative judgments. We don't often make positive judgments.
No.
Sometimes we do, but often, mostly, we make negative judgments toward other people and what they're doing and what we make that mean. That's just leads us down a negative spiral that takes us nowhere good. And especially when you're trying to have a relationship or you're trying to heal a relationship with somebody who's making different choices than you, making something mean something negative is not going to help. It could be true, it could not be true, just like what you said. But judgment, it never leads to anything good. It's not our place to judge, it's just our place to love.
Totally, totally. Let's talk about other options that are going to help us create more compassion and more love for people because that's really what we want. So let's say you have a family member and they have made choices that you don't understand or you don't agree with, and you're trying to mend the relationship. But you have this story in the back of your mind that they're wrong, that you don't like what they're doing. And, maybe there's some heavier stories around that, whatever it might be. And there's this kind of like judgment in the background. Even if you try to talk to them really nicely, there's still going to be this like flavor, of judgment. And that's something we need to address to help have real compassion, to have real connection is what we're looking for. So
Yeah.
something here is I think we get really black and white when it comes to the thoughts we're telling ourselves, and it's either positive or negative. And I want to encourage you to think of it right now in this kind of situation as useful or unuseful. With this kind of a situation, it's not always useful to go from, oh, this person, they've done all these things and I feel so bad and whatever, all this shame and guilt or sadness, all the way to everything's fine and I don't care. Like that would be weird. We don't want to go there. But there's a million options in between this like very black and white kind of a positive or negative mindset we usually think in. Just some potential options of ways that we could approach a situation like this that might feel a little bit more accessible, especially if we're still kind of in the very emotional stage. I sometimes just start with confusion. Stick with me here. I just like to start with, I really don't understand. And I just start there. No judgment attached to it. Just like I'm confused about why they made this choice, or I'm confused about where they are in life. I just don't get it. And see how that's a lot more open-ended, and it's a lot more almost like removing you from having to fix the situation. I think that can be a good first step for a lot of people is I just really don't understand.
I think that is a beautiful first step. It's just like what you said, it takes out responsibility, it takes out shame. Confusion, just not understanding it's almost like you can just stand back and
Yeah.
look at the situation and be like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the truth. Facts, as we're talking, like other people are technically facts, like what they do. We can't change them. We have no control over them, especially these thoughts that can help us stop trying to fix or trying to mend something that is not entirely within our control. Thoughts like that of, I just don't understand. And that's okay. I'm not supposed to understand, I think are really helpful. I think another emotion/thought story that you can tell yourself that might be useful is also just curiosity. And I'm not saying curiosity is I'm going to go try to understand exactly why they've made their choices, but just being more open, just being more interested, genuinely like, I wonder why their life has gone this way. I wonder why they've made these choices. I wonder what's going on for them. I wonder what pain they're in. I wonder what's hard for them. I wonder, you know what I mean? Just like more, again, it's stepping us more into compassion. without having to go all the way to this. I totally love everything about everything. Like it's not that. It's a lot more real. It's like real compassion.
Right.
I think that curiosity in a relationship, if we're trying to understand someone, if we come with that genuine curiosity and we've dropped any shame or judgment we have around it, that
Hmm.
opens the door for a lot more connection
Yeah.
and a lot more closeness.
Depending on where the relationship's at and what the person is comfortable with, like you could even ask those questions to the person
Yeah,
in certain situations. Like maybe that's not always the right thing, but at times to understand if it feels like a good fit, if you feel comfortable and if they're comfortable, you could actually just ask because that helps open the communication line to understanding.
exactly. And that's really what we're going for here. I think it's important to remember in a relationship. I think often what we're looking for when a relationship has been strained in some way, it's not probably going to go right back to how it was before. And that's totally fine. Things are meant to change, and
Hmm.
humans in life, it's all very changing, and that's
Right.
okay. I think what we're really looking for is connection. We don't want that fake, how are you? It's okay, whatever you do. We don't want that surface level. We want to find real connection
Yeah.
and confusion and curiosity. As interesting of a place that is to be, I think we don't typically think that's the first place we want to go in a situation like this, but that can be a very, very helpful way to open the door for more connection. That can even go for yourself. All relationships, they start with you, not the other person. So you can even get curious about yourself or
Mm.
confused about yourself and be like, I wonder why this is so hard for me.
Yeah. Or I wonder why I react this way when this
Why?
happens.
Yeah, what's going on for me? How am
Yeah.
I really feeling? What are my thoughts? Why does this feel heavy? And then just not trying to fix it, but just being curious and just starting there. I think we want to fix. I have that tendency a lot. I just want to make it all better.
Hmm.
But there's this beautiful space in between where so much connection and love and compassion can happen, where we just get curious and we just get open with ourselves. And then when we do that, it's a lot easier to do it with someone else as well, if they're open to it.
Especially when you're working on yourself in that way, which is such an amazing, eye-opening thing to start with. Yourself, of course. Like when you're saying this, I'm like, oh, of course. I think we often don't think that. We aren't often that introspective. I've heard it said that all the answers are inside of us. So I think when you ask your brain that question, I wonder why I do this. Sometimes I've had this happen, not always, but sometimes an answer will like pop into my mind and I'll be like,
Hmm.
"Oh, it's because of this." I recently had this experience where I was, "Oh, I wonder why I feel triggered when this happens." And an answer popped into my brain and it was something from my childhood, like this memory that popped in, and I knew that was my reason why I felt triggered in that situation every single time in my adult life. And I was like, "Oh, that's why." It was so amazing.
That's so cool. And there's something about that like awareness that just, even if that still happens and you still get triggered or, you respond in a way maybe you wouldn't like to, suddenly we understand why. So there's
Mhm.
so much more love we can give ourselves
Right. And
when
often,
we
if you
understand.
understand why, you then can shift.
Exactly.
It's when you don't know why that you can't see it, you can't shift. But when you understand why, you can make a shift, a conscious shift. And it feels
Yes.
really good to do that.
Yes. Yes. Like you were saying, working on yourself. I mean, that's where you have to start. Like we said, facts, they're neutral, they're outside of our control. That's the end. The only thing we can do is work on ourselves. And like these examples that we've given kind of at the beginning of this episode where we were talking about like the weather or, things like that are a little bit more lighthearted or superficial. Your experience changes when you change the story. When you change the story, you're telling yourself you have a different experience, even though the fact didn't change. It's the same with relationships. The person is not going to change in the way you would want them to at the timing you would want them to, right? They're going to do their own thing. They're outside of your control. But the situation can change when you change. Not as in like, if you change, they'll change, but as in your experience within the situation will change when you do the work on yourself. Honestly, as weird as it sounds, because we always talk about how relationships are both ways, but that's not always useful. I like to think of relationships as what am I doing? And just not put it all on me. I'm not talking about that, but just how am I showing up? How am I thinking about this person? And how is that affecting the depth at which we're able to connect? And if I'm not able to do that at the level I would like to, What do I need to work on? Where's my work?
Yeah.
How is this showing me my work I need to do on myself?
So good. So good.
We were talking about useful things to do in our relationships, and we talked about feeling confusion and curiosity. Like I said, all the stories we tell ourselves are optional. Maybe you've been spending some time in the confusion and being like, I don't understand, and that's okay. Maybe you've been in some curiosity about the person and yourself. It's kind of like, well, where do I go from there? Because we probably don't want to stay in that land forever. There's a lot of good things to learn there, but I think we want to feel better eventually. So this is something that you're going to have to work on your own to find something that feels good for you, to find a story to tell that feels good for you. I just wanted to remind you that you get to choose the story you tell about this person. You really do get to choose the experience you have. When we think about telling a story about a person and it's someone that you love, do we want to be telling the story that they've hurt people and they're so wrong and their life is going this way and if only I had whatever? Or do we want to be telling the story that they're human and we love them and they're God's child and they're going through a lot of things and we don't understand, and that's okay, but we're there for them and they're working it out and they're so strong that they're going through all this pain and they're working through all this stuff that we just don't understand? What story do we want to be telling? We really have an option here. And it's okay if you're not in that happier feeling story yet. That's okay. You don't have to be there yet, but just know that's an option. It's not going to be through the person changing that you get there. It's going to be from you changing that you get to that story. And it really is within your power to make that happen. And I just think that's wonderful. We're given this gift of choice. Some people choose to do things that we don't get and maybe we would never do ourselves. But do we want to let their choice lead us to make choices that we also don't want to make? Telling stories that aren't useful, that bring us down? Or do we want to tell stories that lift us up and lift others up and lift them up? Because they're still just as worthy as in who they are at the core.
Right.
A child of God or whatever. Their worth does not change no matter what they do. So do we want to talk about them that way or not? It's a choice. That determines the experience that we have in our life. Our life is not determined by other people. It's determined by us and what we choose. That was just the last thing I wanted to say.
It feels so much, as you were describing both sides, it feels so much more empowering. And I know empowerment is what you do. It feels so much more empowering to make a positive choice, to have that option and to realize you have an option. You don't have to feel the way you feel. You don't have to look at things negatively. You do have a choice, and it feels so empowering and so relieving even and freeing to realize I have a choice. I can't change them, but I can change me. I can change the way I look at things. I can change my perception, the story I'm telling. I just absolutely love that you've shared that today. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing the difference between facts and stories and what's useful and what's not useful. I love everything you shared about confusion and curiosity and how it actually does lead to connection. It's just beautiful. Would you take a minute, Emily, and share with my listeners how they can connect with you?
Yes. If you want to connect more, you can find me on Instagram mostly. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm mostly on Instagram. You can find me at Emily Cheney Coaching, just on Instagram. We can connect there. I also, like was mentioned before, I do have my own podcast and it's called Becoming a Relentless Woman. And it's just a lot about, mindset, empowerment, confidence, helping you feel like you're really living your best life and not just kind of getting by or doing what everyone else is doing, but really feeling like it's your life and you're doing what matters most to you and feeling really good and happy in your life. So that's where you can find me if you want to connect more. I'm a life coach. We can work one-on-one with each other. I also have some other programs and things that I offer as well if you want to connect in that kind of a way. Head to my Instagram and you'll find everything there.
Thank you. I will put links to all of those things in the show notes so you can find a way to connect with Emily there. Emily, thank you so much for being with me. And listeners, if this episode has resonated with you, please share it with someone. The things that we are talking about on here, especially today's episode, are things that apply not just if you have someone struggling with leaving their faith, but they apply in any relationship that you're trying to improve. Please join me again next time for another episode of Just Love Them.